Good morning. It's Tuesday. It's 10 a.m. Welcome to Coffee and Conversations. Will someone throw something in the chat for me to make sure it is working since we had issues 2 weeks ago? Oh, I see something. Good morning, Jill. So that is good. We are cooking. We're brewing. Whatever term you want to use to say that it is working. Anyhow, we're going to be in Acts chapter 16, 1-5 today. Super excited for this passage. I think it actually shows something that's really critical for us as we consider our mission in the world as believers. Good morning, Karen. It's good for you to. It's good to see you. Glad you're here. Whatever term. It's weird. You see me. I don't see you. I know you're here though because you're commenting. And I'm going to stop chasing rabbits. Anyhow, 7-word series. We're in the middle of this in this season to prepare for Easter, prepare for Resurrection Sunday. So I hope you've enjoyed the 2 sermons so far. We posted the video that we tried to play on Sunday but didn't have any audio on Facebook, but we will also plan to send it out. So just haven't gotten to that point yet. I would encourage you to watch it. It is just so powerful. It's really hard to do it justice what it shows. So we will not have any coffee and conversations next week. I will be out of the office. So if you try to show up on YouTube, you'll just have your coffee and be in your pajamas or in your work clothes, or you'll be sitting in the break room, whatever those things may be. So you'll be by yourself or whoever is normally with you. And then lastly, we have our annual celebration on Sunday this week, the 25th. After service, potluck. We're going to talk about what God has done in the past year and what is going to be coming in the year ahead. And just, it's going to be a great time. So make sure you join us for that. Main dishes are to be provided by people with A through G last name. And then a side and a dessert provided by those who have last names H through Z. So, which makes me really excited because that means my wife is making dessert, and I like my wife's dessert. She makes really good dessert. So it'll be a great time as we celebrate and remember what God has done, and just have a grand time. All right, let's jump into Acts chapter 16. If you remember, last time we were together, we talked about how Paul and Barnabas split up over Mark, John Mark, the author of the book of Mark, and Barnabas's cousin, and later who becomes a very faithful worker with Paul and Timothy and Silas. The missionary band comes to view John Mark as positive, even though this instance, at this point in their ministry, it causes Paul and Barnabas to separate. So they've separated Paul and Silas. They depart Antioch and they start going around and preaching. Barnabas goes to Cyprus and they go through Syria, Cilicia, and strengthening the churches. We talked about how it was Paul's practice to go and preach and then strengthen the churches that were part of his ministry. So he's got this dual strategy of building up the church and planting churches. He is not he doesn't just start churches and leave them alone. He doesn't create orphans. He creates families that he cares for and he ministers to. Think of maybe not most of, a bunch of Paul's epistles are to people he knows. You think of Philippi, the church to the Philippians. You think of the 1st and 2nd Corinthians. You think of Galatians. You think of First and 2nd Thessalonians. These are churches that Paul helped found. He didn't found Rome, but he sends them an epistle. He didn't found Ephesus, but he sends them an epistle. He ministers to Philemon, and Philemon comes to faith through Paul, and he sends him a letter. So Paul has this dual strategy of strengthening churches and evangelizing. So he's going to continue through that process. And Paul and Silas. It's going to talk about Paul as the primary person, but Paul is never alone. He's always doing his ministry with others, and he comes to Derbe and Lystra, and a disciple was there named Timothy. So these are places that Paul has already been, and Timothy most likely came to faith under Paul's ministry. There's a in one of the Corinthians letters, and I can't remember if it's first or second. I read it this morning, but I've forgotten if it's a 1 or a 2 in front of it. He talks about him, Timothy, being his child in the faith, or a son in the faith. And so it's likely that Timothy came to faith under Paul. And then Timothy's grandmother and his mother have come to faith under Paul. And Paul talks about them having faith and them instructing Timothy in the ways of faith as he was growing in his faith. And it says that Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, so his mom has faith, but his father was Greek. Timothy is half Jewish and half Greek. He would have been considered, Jewish tradition would trace ethnic heritage through the mother. So he would have been considered at least partially Jewish. He could have been fully Jewish if his family had raised him according to the standards of Judaism. But as we will see, Timothy's family does not do everything that would be expected of a Jewish family. He was well spoken of by the brothers. So Timothy is a disciple, and the church is speaking well of him at Lystra and Iconium. So Timothy's reputation precedes him, so to speak. He is well spoken of by the church, by those who have faith. So the brothers and sisters, the ESV just puts brothers, but it would be a familial term of siblings. And so in this context, it means the church. And Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and he circumcised him. Now, we might be thinking, what, Paul, why are you doing this? Paul, you just had a decision made in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem council said Timothy doesn't need to do this. This is not for salvation. This is not an expectation that is put upon believers. So why is Paul doing this? Paul, like everything he does, is undergirding and thinking through what will best accomplish the mission to win people to Jesus. It says here, he circumcised him because of Jews who were in those places. Paul wants to best minister to the Jews. He wants to witness to them. He talks about, to those under the law, I became as one under the law. To those who weren't under the law, I lived as one who was not under the law. Paul's overarching strategy, his whole methodology, is undergirded by this reality that he's going to do whatever he can to minister and evangelize and witness to those who are from God, whether they be people who think they know God or they're people who are way far off from God. Paul is not going to let there be any hindrance in his ministry. He's willing to give up the things that he knows he doesn't have to. He's going to do it for the sake of winning some. He is willing to give himself dietary restrictions if that means it will help him, enable him to witness to those who hold to those dietary restrictions. He's going to give up and lay behind various rules that that might hinder him in it. They're things that aren't gospel critical, things that aren't commands of God. He is willing to lay aside for the sake of the gospel. And that's a challenging thing for us, because sometimes we want to hold on to dearly held things, and we think, well, they need to accommodate to me. They need to accommodate to my perspectives. The Apostle Paul is showing us that we need to accommodate to others for the sake of the gospel. What did Jesus do? Jesus accommodated us by coming to us and living as a man for the sake of the gospel to accomplish his purpose. The Apostle Paul does the same thing. He lays down his rights, his freedoms, he sacrifices them for the sake of others. Sometimes we need to do the same thing. We really probably need to do it all the time, but sometimes there are things we can hold on to that hinder us in preaching the gospel, in sharing the gospel. So if we want to reach people, we need to lay down some of those things for the sake of the gospel. Do we want to see family members, neighbors, and friends won to Christ? Do we want to see them believe in Jesus and receive the gift of salvation and be reconciled to the Father and no longer be aliens and estranged from God? Do we want to see those things? I sure hope we do. Then we need to lay some things down sometimes. Maybe we need to lay down our own personal comforts and just being willing to say, hey, can I talk to you about Jesus? Hey, is there something I can be praying for you? Those are awkward conversations sometimes, but is it worth it so that that person might come to know Jesus and put their faith in him? I hope so. I hope laying down our rights as believers for the sake of others to witness to them is something we would willingly and readily do, giving up our rights. Now, we as Americans, we love our rights because we have this thing called the Bill of Rights. We love them, and I don't want to have to give up those things. Are we willing to lay down our rights? And I'm not talking about the Bill of Rights when I use it in this way. Are we willing to lay down our comforts, our preferences, our perspectives for the sake of winning others to the gospel? Hopefully we are. And that's a challenging thing to us. Are we willing to give those things up so that others might come to know Jesus? Then he goes on, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. So they're thinking, well, he's not really fully Jewish, so we can disregard it. Paul doesn't want them to have a reason to disregard their ministry. As they went on their way through the cities, they delivered to them for observance the decisions that had been reached by the apostles and elders who were in Jerusalem. This is really funny when you think about it. Paul and Silas and Timothy, the guy who was just circumcised, go about telling people that they don't need to be circumcised. Okay, well, they circumcised Timothy so that way people will know that their ministry is valid, so that there's not this stumbling block to them. We don't need, the gospel is hard enough. It is foolishness, and it is it is not wise, and it is a stumbling block to the Jews. It is foolishness to the Greeks, stumbling block to the Jews. Friends, we don't need to add to that. We need to be faithful and being willing to give up these things, our comforts, our preferences for the sake of the gospel. So the churches were strengthened in faith and they increased in numbers daily. These efforts were strengthened the faith of the church, and through that, as a result of that, their numbers increased. When faith increases, ministry increases, and evangelism increases, and so the church grows. Friends, we should pray for the Lord to strengthen our faith, to encourage us to faithfully pursue him, and that we would be faithful so that we could see the numbers of the church grow. Whether that's our church or other churches, we want to see churches grow because it is beautiful and pleasing to the Father when people put their faith, hope, and trust in our Lord. Friends, I hope this, to some degree, is a little challenging, that it would cause you to think about, what am I holding on to anything that might hinder me in sharing the gospel? Am I holding on to my comforts or my conveniences? And that's hindering me in the sharing of the gospel and strengthening other believers. Am I willing to lay down my rights for the sake of the gospel? I hope the answer is yes. And I hope you'll pray about that and consider the ways that the Lord might be working in your life, that he's calling you to lay things down. Oh, I hope that encourages you and considers those things as you consider those things. Because, friends, I want to see people saved. I want to see people strengthened. I want to see our numbers increase daily. That'd be really crazy. Yeah, if your numbers increase daily, think about that. Their numbers increased daily. That means at least one person was added every day in the course of, I think, like a year. So that's 365 people added. And that's just one. There implies the ability for there to be more than one. If our church grew by 365 people in the next year, that would be, I don't know what we would do. We don't have a big enough building. Hey, let's pray for a bigger building, okay? Sorry, squirrel tangent. That'd be crazy though. What would happen? What would it look like if the Lord did such a thing? That'd be amazing. I hope that encourages you, that thought, and challenges you, and makes you think about what are some ways that you can give up your perspectives, your rights to seek to win others to the Lord. So, does anyone have any questions for our Q&A time? I forgot to mention at the beginning, I'm not going to keep asking you guys at the end on Q&As going forward. So just if you have a Q&A, would love to see you throwing those in there throughout the discussion or at the beginning. Oh, there we go. And Allison said, we have been seeing a lot of new faces on Sundays. Yes, we have, and it's awesome to see new faces and people coming and longing to hear the word of the Lord, and the work of the Lord being manifest and evident in the lives of people. And people, there's some stories going on that I absolutely love, that I don't feel that I'm privileged to share, but the Lord is at work in mighty and magnificent ways. And I hope I can share some of them in due time, because I think they'll blow your mind. So if anyone have any questions, none have shown up yet. So friends, I will see you Sunday for our annual celebration. We will celebrate the things that God has done. He has done awesome things in the past year. We saw baptisms, we saw members join, we saw missions team go out, we saw VBS, we saw all these amazing things where God is working. And I can't wait for us to celebrate all of them. So we'll see you Sunday, and that's all we got.